Another week and another walking simulator. This one is Someday You'll Return.
No.
But
No buts. Two things. First, nobody knows these woods better than I do. If I can't find her, nobody can. And second, it's what I do.
This one's a little bit more action-packed and on the horror side. This is Someday You'll Return. You're in this park looking for your daughter, and that's the majority of the plot here. You are trying to follow her last footsteps, some little hints scattered here and there, and a lot of your old memories from this camp and the mountainside that you visited as a child. Now, a lot of these locations have some significance to you, so you go through and you're left with this story being told of your memories from the past and kind of what's going on in the future as you pick up the scraps to try and find your daughter. It's a really cool story, and they definitely took into account the pacing of how they tell it. This game is very, very long, considering the gameplay that is involved. The puzzles can definitely hold you up for extra time, but even if that's not an issue, there's still a lot of scenery and a lot of exploration to go through. These mountainsides are just packed. They put a lot of collectibles into this, and a lot of different, almost seemingly missable, different things that you can explore in the map. Now, we've reviewed quite a lot of these walking sim horror slash games before. I want to highlight that this one is definitely a little heavier with the horror, and I'm a huge fan of that myself. I really enjoy those gameplay moments, and it breaks up the pace of the walking. There's a lot of sections that are just packed with enemies, this crazy black goo substance, and a lot of puzzles to kind of get you around those hazards.
The exit from the camp is behind the black, whatever this is. I don't want to risk even touching that stuff.
Now, the puzzles are the roadblock that prevents you from progressing through the story, but there's a few roadblocks that kind of prevent you from progressing through the puzzles. There's a couple systems that you have at your disposal to navigate the world and to, maybe unlock certain abilities or to give yourself enhancements to get through different places. One example of this is the alchemy. They have this whole alchemy system that involves you collecting herbs from the ground, cutting them up and harvesting their individual parts, and then taking the petals or the leaves or the roots and crushing them up and adding them to a potion. It's a really cool system. I think it works really well for a lot of things. It only really falters in the description of some of the potions. Some of the potions, it just tells you in a loose wording how to add things in which order, or, use these crushed petals versus crushed leaves. It just says mix them together. Examples of that where it's not 100% clear how to do the potion, but it's one of those things where when you figure it out, you kind of go, oh, okay, and it makes a lot more sense from then on. I'm now in the game where I've found this diary. There's all these mysteries involved in the diary. It gives you the sense that there's a lot of outer world things that you can do alongside the plot. Taking the right potion, I can hear the thoughts of the writer of the notes that I'm finding. So there's different things that maybe give you more information if you're paying attention. And I like that looseness. Even if it's totally linear, I feel like I have the freedom to kind of play it in a different way. Aside from the alchemy system, you have an inventory, and it's pretty expansive. You get a tool set early on, and it allows you to manipulate some of the items in the world that you find, whether it be unscrewing something or using a hammer to break something open. You have that tool set available, and when you find the different items that are combinable, it'll allow you to interact with them in the menus. And I think that works really well. The closest parallel I can think of to that is Amnesia. That game has a great inventory system. I feel like they took this inventory and kind of stepped it up for this game. It's a little bit more intuitive than I remember Amnesia being, and just having the tool set on screen or letting it black out when it's not available is very helpful. And it allows you to interact with the world to produce a ladder to cross a crevasse, or just to craft a certain item to read it, let's say. They're very creative with the ways you solve the puzzles and the different items that you find along the way. There's a lot of riddles in this game, and I like that. I like the language-based, I like the math-based riddles. There's some that make no sense almost. It's alien symbols, but when you get it, you're like, oh, okay, I finally feel like I've accomplished something. The game is also really long, so you get a lot of these accomplishments. You get a lot of these tutorial windows popping up when you thought you'd be past that. It's really interesting how they keep you going in this long game without getting bored of it in any way by introducing new systems as you go. It changes the pace of a lot of the sections, and it really spices up what could have been a stale experience.
No way.
Stella, I'm coming.
Production-wise, this game is pretty tight. I've experienced some very minor bugs relating to when you creep into an area and you get visibly bothered. There's a sickness that creeps over you or something, or you collapse on the hands and knees. I've had stutter and frame rate issues around those animations, but that is really it as far as bugs. Production-wise, seems to be very well produced. The visuals are nice and sharp. The graphics are better than they would ever need to be. It's a beautiful scenery, beautiful vistas that you're exposed to. So the graphics really do help in those scenarios. But there's a big focus on audio. The audio here is also really tight. There's a lot of little whispers when you're in certain areas that allude to those kind of extra things you can do in the game. But there's also a lot of horror elements. They do a good job of kind of startling you when you need it and kind of leaning off when you don't need it. There's a lot of sound cues in some of the more action-packed sequences where you need to run away from something, and they're bone-chilling. I really like that attention to detail when it comes to the horror elements, because that's not 100% of this game, but it really does hammer in those moments. It's a lot about the ambience and the creeping out factor. So when you hit a paced section that's much faster, you're ready to go. It's a feeling that you've been kind of trying to let out the entire experience.
I made it.
Well, I don't want to talk about this game too much further because I don't want to give anything away. There's a lot to it, and I want you to explore it for yourself and kind of see where you line up in this game, because it is a mix of genres, and I think they did a really good job of making something that kind of goes beyond the basic walking sim horror experience. This one was a really big standout for me, and if I'm going to put a score on this one, it's going to have to be an 8.5 out of 10. This really excelled in a lot of categories, and I'm hooked coming back for more to figure out what is going on this mountainside. I'm in.
It's definitely connected to the black traps below. Maybe if I destroyed it.
Great combination of genre-defining action and storytelling, a must-try for fans of a horror mystery experience.
What was that? Gotta hide.
Well, you watched this video. If you like that and you want to see a whole lot more, check out our channel. Give us a like and subscribe.
What was that? Gotta hide.